So, if you've been subscribing to this channel to watch Ableton Live videos, I'm just going to give you a heads up. This content, this channel is probably going to change. So, I've been diagnosed with Meniere's disease, which is something that can permanently damage both your hearing and your balance. It's a progressive disease, and unfortunately, it does not have a cure. Now, it's not a big shock to me. 30 years ago, I was actually diagnosed with something called endolymphatic hydrops in my left ear, which for this video we'll call my first ear. This hydrops condition is actually a precursor for Meniere's disease, and so they warned me, hey, you could eventually develop Meniere's disease or you could not. So for 30 years I've actually tolerated my first ear being a little bit annoying, but it was always something I could tolerate. It never really affected my life or even really my hearing in a bad way. I always just had a sense of a little bit of fullness in that ear sometimes, but I dealt with it. Now, a few years ago, I could start to tell that this first ear was starting to have a little bit of trouble. So I went to my ENT and did a hearing test, and sure enough, I could see that that left ear, my first ear, was starting to drop some. Fast forward to this past April 2022, I was having even more challenges with that ear in March, and in April I had my first vertigo attack. Now, I instantly knew what it was because I know with Meniere's disease that's something that can happen. And so I called my doctor again. Actually, within 7 days, I had 5 vertigo attacks. So in this hearing test, I could see my left ear had dropped even more. Now, Meniere's disease is very rare. It's estimated that only 0.1% of people in the United States even have this disease. There is a smaller subset of people within that small 0.1%. My doctor says it's estimated that anywhere between 25 and 50% of those people actually develop the condition in both ears, which is referred to as bilateral Meniere's disease. But it's super rare. Well, on May 12th of 2023, that happened to me. I lost my second ear, my right ear. I woke up that day and everything in that ear was very distorted. I was having trouble even understanding speech. I called my doctor and got in right away, and sure enough, we saw my right ear had eerily dropped down in almost a symmetrical manner to my first ear. So right now I'm actually with a specialist at Vanderbilt, and we're kind of trying to see where my hearing is going to kind of bottom out. The frustrating thing about Meniere's disease is everybody's journey with it is completely different as far as where it's going to bottom out, how it fluctuates. It's completely different with every person that has it. Vertigo attacks also came back, and they were actually a bit worse when I lost this second ear. I had like 4 attacks within, I think, about a week and a half. This time the spinning lasted for an hour, and I pretty much when those happen, I'm on the floor for about an hour and a half trying to make sure I'm not going to puke and make sure I can just get back up off the floor. So what's scary is to see how much hearing I've lost over the past year. I mean, is there a chance that in a year from now I could be profoundly deaf? Yeah, there's actually a chance. But we don't know. I could just stay here for a while or permanently. We just don't know what's going to happen. Now, unfortunately, when I lost my good ear, my second ear, I now have a ton of new features with this that I'm trying to get used to. Everything from tinnitus, I have multiple rings in both ears, I have roaring, I have pulsing, I have actually a wandering drone that wanders around constantly 24/7 by semitones around certain pitches. Now, unfortunately, what these audio tests don't show you is how I hear music now. Most people that are familiar with Meniere's disease know that it causes hearing loss, but what's not talked about a lot is what Meniere's disease adds to the little hearing that you have left. So I now have distortions and resonances and everything that's coming in. When it comes to music, I have days where music, unfortunately, is now reduced to just rhythmic white noise with no tonality. I can't find any sense of tonic. I can't discern instrumentation. I can't even tell when chords change. Now that's on my bad days. Now on my good days, where that fluctuation is a little bit better, unfortunately, even on my good days, I'm still dealing with distortion. I'm dealing with a difference in pitch between my 2 ears that makes music very unsettling. And those are on my good days. Now for many with Meniere's disease, once that happens, that distortion of music, which is caused by the permanent damage, unfortunately, for some people, that doesn't get better. For me, it's been over 5 weeks now, and music, unfortunately, even on my good days, still sounds very unsettling and hard to listen to. The other scary thing that's happening is I'm losing my ability to understand speech. Some days it's better than others, but I mean, right now I have to use an app to even understand phone calls. I have to have captioning. Yesterday, my husband was sitting next to me on his phone, and I could hear him talking, but I couldn't understand any of the words he was saying. As of yesterday, my word recognition has dropped to 68% in one ear and 76% in the other. But I do have some days where my word recognition is a little bit better. Again, part of the frustrating thing of Meniere's disease is there is an unpredictable fluctuation from one day to the next. So as a result, I actually have a consult for hearing aids tomorrow. They will mainly help me just to be able to communicate on a day-to-day basis. Unfortunately, they can't really fix that musical distortion that I'm now hearing. Cochlear implants are also a possibility. If my hearing gets bad enough where my speech recognition drops below 50%, I could become a candidate for that. That's a major commitment that I'm not even really sure I want to do. I mean, just Google cochlear implants and you'll understand why that's a major commitment. So when it comes to the vertigo, I still have days where I have to be really careful. There are some days where I know I just really can't leave the house. I mean, just the vertigo alone, it affects everything from your independence to your vision, it initiates all kind of issues with fear and anxiety of some days of even just leaving the house. That's a whole other thing I'll talk about. There are treatments for the vertigo if it becomes too hard to manage. And again, I'll talk about vertigo in some other videos. Unfortunately, the only treatment for my hearing loss is hearing aids, and then eventually, if I qualify, cochlear implants, if that's something I even want to do. So when it comes to music, and I'll post another video on that entirely because that has its own subset of issues. When it comes to music right now, I don't have the ability to hear what's going on. So I can't critically assess or evaluate anything related to music or synthesis right now. Could it get better? A miracle could happen, but statistically, the way it goes with this, unfortunately, it typically trends in the other direction, where this kind of damage is usually more often than not permanent. Now, MTSU has been super supportive. I'll be taking sick leave for the fall. I'm going through a lot. I'll be honest. This is the most painful thing I've ever had to walk through. And so if you're wondering why, if I am giving the illusion that I'm really strong right now, I'm not. I have my moments, but I've also had a bit of warning. I mean, this is something that has been going on, honestly, for a year now. So I've had some warning and some time, especially over the past few months, to really start considering these possibilities. Right now, I'm on the beginning of a journey of the very real reality that I could be losing the ability to not only just hear in general, but to be able to hear music. That's going to take a while to untangle. But I got to tell you, at the end of the day, I can still teach and encourage and help others. I have no plan to stop doing that no matter what happens. I also know that I don't want my story to be for nothing. That's probably bad grammar. I don't know. I won't be teaching English. So I have things I want to talk about. I'll be posting some videos. I want to talk about just music and my identity. How am I even untangling that? I also want to talk about how am I making sense of this spiritually, because I know you're probably thinking about that. How am I even making sense of this whole thing? How am I dealing with vertigo? How am I managing tinnitus and not letting it drive me absolutely insane? We'll talk about how therapy is really helping me. We got lots of things to talk about. I hope more than anything that my story is actually not even really focused on just this idea of just dealing with hearing loss. I hope it ends up being more about a conversation we can have about what happens when the unthinkable happens to you. And imagine your worst nightmare and it comes true. How do you walk through that? How do you deal with that? So have no fear. I'm gearing up for the sequel. I'm going to need some time to do some life rebranding to get used to just living life in a new way. Am I still going to produce music? I don't know. I mean, I guess I could do drums and I don't know. Am I going to renew my Ableton certified trainer deal? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. But I just wanted to give people a heads up so things don't seem awkward. If you don't see me around for a while, if you wonder what's going on with me, I got a lot going on. This is painful, but I'm going to be okay. I can see myself on the other side of this. Right now, I feel like I'm at the beginning of what could be a dark tunnel, but I can absolutely see myself on the other side of this, doing what I always do, teaching and encouraging and helping people. So thank you so much for your support in advance. I'm going to need it, and let's talk again soon.